That's a backwards pass. It's a live ball. That's a touchdown taken off the board.
Slide that on over. What's up, fam? Scranton Strangler here. As always, we're gonna hop back into the football podcast where pretty much every day we're gonna have a stream about college football, NFL football, and then quality video game gameplay. But today we're gonna start it off with college football. We've got 3 games actually starting pretty much right at this moment. One of them happens to be in Columbus, but before we go there, it has been an eventful morning in college, but also in the NFL. If you don't follow me on my other social media platforms, then you may not know the NFL has been pretty busy this morning. Um, Longtime running back LaShawn Shady McCoy actually got cut by the Buffalo Bills. If you've watched my previous streams, you might have an inkling that that was coming because man, he's just not what he unfortunately used to be. He's got a injury problem and. They've got quite a few running backs behind him that can absolutely do what he does. So, kind of save a little bit of money there on that big name, if you will. Another thing that happened actually was J. Devion Clowney. If you've been keeping up with that kind of situation at all, you know that they have been shopping Clowney around for about 5 teams now. One second, got another update. Yeah, they've been actually shopping him around past week or so. The guy just wants just too much money, unfortunately, and I know he's a first round draft pick. He's first, overall. He's supposed to be. He's a solid player, especially on the opposite side of JJ, but he's just not worth that price tag, that 20 that he's trying to hang out there as bait from anybody. So they have traded him to actually Seattle. He's going to join be a Legion of Boom, if you will. Even though they don't have that cast anymore. So NFL trading away big names today. It's 1 week obviously before the NFL season, so they want to get it done sooner rather than later. So holdout issues, things like that, don't kind of transfer into the season, and they don't see a Le'Veon Bell situation as if you will. So, but that's going to be the NFL. Now we can finally transition over to college football, which we have. It's college football Saturday, so we have plenty of games to kind of go over. I'm going to go down the list now. The first one, let's see, Rashawn McCoy. Actually. Before I do that, what did we learn last night? Because we had 2 top 25 ranked teams play last night, not against each other, 2 separate games. They were actually both Big Ten games. We had Wisconsin, and we also had Michigan State. Now, some of my notes here that I have for Michigan State. What did we learn? Well, we definitely learned that the defense is stout, which I already knew that was already going to kind of be their strong suit. So that's not really so much what we learned. What we did learn though is that the offense is worse than we thought. It's a lot worse than they could have imagined. They by no means have a prolific offense. Let me read you some of these numbers. Quarterback threw it 37 times and he completed it 21. Not very good completion percentage, but not the worst number on this board. 192 yards passing as a quarterback. That's not good. The average, 5.2 yards a throw. 5.2 yards a throw. When you have 21 attempts and you throw less than 200 yards, that's definitely meaning that you're kind of dinking and dacking, throwing a lot of screen passes, really just trying to get something done, because obviously they weren't getting anything. They were shut out, at the half for sure. Let's see, he was what is that? Oh, now I will give the quarterback this. He didn't throw he didn't throw an interception, which is very surprising in my opinion. But he threw 1 touchdown, so versus 0 interceptions. So at least that was probably his most positive numbers. But then outside of that, this is probably the biggest one right here. 46. That was his QBR. Whenever you have other quarterbacks out there that are have perfect passer ratings, at like 153, for the NFL, and then even higher for college. When you have a QBR of 46, that means that something's wrong. Okay, now that's the quarterback. The team just overall couldn't get anything going versus the quarterback and even the running backs. They had, as a team, they averaged less than 3 yards a carry. They averaged 2.7 yards a carry. They had 0 rushing touchdowns. They only had 1 offensive touchdown the entire game, and it was on a penalty-aided drive that kind of pushed them closer to the end zone, and they had a nice pass. They got a touchdown pass in that one. Other than that, they had they had a defensive score, which I suspect. So they've scored as much defensive touchdowns as they have offensive touchdowns this year. They had a fumble recovery in the end zone. Luckily, they landed right on it. So that was pretty good for them. And then they had 4 field goals. So it's like they can sort of move the ball, but they were just getting such good field position. They were shutting down the other team that they weren't. It's not like they were facing a bend not break defense and moving down the field. They just weren't able to capitalize on anything. So they kicked 4 field goals. They scored 1 penalty aided offensive passing touchdown, and then they had a fumble recovery in the end zone for their second touchdown in the second half. So it's good that their defense is able to carry them through this week. But that's not going to be the case whenever they face steeper competitions, especially in their own division, like a Michigan Wolverines or the Ohio State Buckeyes, Nebraska Cornhuskers, Wisconsin. All of these other teams at this point could clean the floor, is what I'm saying with Michigan State. So Michigan State, they need to do a little bit better. They play Western Michigan next week. It's a tune-up game. It's another chance for them to kind of expand on their offense and see if they can get some sort of productivity. Because if they only score 1 touchdown against that next week against Western Michigan, then I'm calling their season pretty much at this point. They shouldn't be in the top 25. Whoever put them in the top 25, ESPN, a couple other announcers that I'm not even going to throw out there because I don't want to throw specific names, but you should be ashamed of yourselves because Michigan State is not a top 25 team. Move on. I'm going to go to the other Big Ten team that played yesterday, and that's going to be Wisconsin. After it was like an hour rain delay, it wasn't too bad, but they finally got on the field. You kind of had an idea that this one was just going to be a ground and pound because of the rain, things like that. But whenever you look at them, you see Michigan State, and then you look on the other hand and you see Wisconsin. Wisconsin is doing what Michigan State wants to do, what they're trying to mirror them, and they just don't have it. Wisconsin has an absolute hell of a defense. I'm going to pause on this one real quick. We'll go back. I always forget my predictions. If I ever forget my predictions on my previous games, make sure to comment. I've got a couple people watching right now. Make sure to comment because I'll forget about it. I've got so much stuff written down on my notes. My mind goes like this. This is where my mind goes. So I predicted actually it was going to be a shutout for Michigan State. It was 38-0. I didn't realize that their offense was that bad, but they did win, and it was 28-7. So didn't quite cover on that one, but that's okay. So on the other hand, you look at Wisconsin, and they look complete, and their defense is absolutely amazing. Let's get that 23 flavors of Dr. Pepper. Excuse me. So they look like a complete football team. Their defense is stout. It is going to be a force to reckon with in the Big 12, kind of like a Michigan. But then their offense looked, just as good, just as solid overall. And it wasn't just the running back. Jonathan Taylor is phenomenal, but they had some very solid, um, quarterback play. Excuse me. Um, let's see. Now for that, yeah. So Jonathan's numbers, what has he got? 16. I was trying to see if I wrote anything down about that quarterback, but no, it's all going to be behind Jonathan Taylor. Now the quarterback is solid. He makes the right decisions. He didn't make any mistakes. Had good completion percentage. Had good yardage. Threw a couple pair of touchdowns. Just so happened that those couple pair of touchdowns came to Jonathan, and that's really where the kind of the emphasis of this team is going to be. The rock horse, wherever the ball is, you need to pay attention to where Jonathan Taylor is running the football. He carried the ball for 16 carries. He had 135 yards, and he scored 2 touchdowns. The 2 touchdowns that he did score were for 35 yards plus. He had I think it was a 37-yarder and then a 38-yarder. And then in the receiving game, he can get it done too. He caught 2 passes and he scored on both of them, totaling both for 48 yards. 2 catches, 48 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So he had 4 touchdowns overall. He had 180-yard all-purpose yards. So Jonathan Taylor is back. Looks to be phenomenal in great season form, in mid-season form, I should say. And he should kind of run the Big 12, in rushing, that is. So Paul Christ, the head coach, definitely did a good job. I wasn't as high, I didn't realize the defense that we were going to receive from Wisconsin. So I definitely didn't pick this one. These 2 teams that kind of opened my eyes as to what we're going to see kind of in the future. I said that they were going to win 38-23. They ended up winning 49-0. So it was an overall performance, complete dominance from offense, defense, and special teams. So congratulations on Wisconsin Badgers. Now we're going to move on. Actually wanted to touch base before we get on to the games today. I know I'm running a little bit behind. I've kind of stressed this part out a little bit. But a non-ranked top 25 team that I was pretty impressed with was actually Oklahoma State. So I'll touch on them very, very briefly, just because they're not a top 25 team. But Oklahoma State, they lose their quarterback. They replace him with an even better quarterback. Spencer Sanders comes in. He was one of the highest rated Texas quarterbacks coming out of high school last year, and man, he looked like a stud. He was extremely proficient. He threw for a lot of yards, which of course he threw for he was 19 for 24. I'll just give you the stats. He was 19 for 24 passes. He threw for over 200 yards. He threw for 3 touchdowns, and he ran for over 100 yards. So they it was addition by subtraction, essentially, for Oklahoma State. So they definitely look good. They don't look to skip a beat. They actually look like they're going to be even better than last year. They had behind Chuba Hubbard, their running back, looked absolutely phenomenal. He was a Big 12 running back preseason selection. So Chuba Hubbard, he was on 26 carries. He had over 220 yards. And he scored 3 touchdowns. Now, if you do kind of the math on that one, he's going to average over 8 yards a carry, 8.5 to be exact. So that's pretty phenomenal. And then the skill player on the outside, who should have won, should have been the best wide receiver and gotten that award last year. But he was a little robbed. It's okay. But Tylan Wallace, he caught the ball 5 times for 92 yards, averaging over 18 yards a catch, and he scored a couple times. So I was interested to see. Mike Gundy was kind of going over in some of these press conferences. He was saying that he didn't have a quarterback. He didn't know which one he was going to start. Both of these guys have played phenomenal throughout the spring, that there wasn't one that separated from the other, and that both quarterbacks have earned a spot to really play, but I didn't see the other quarterback play. So I'll have to do a little research on that and see what exactly was the standout. And not saying that the other guy should have been in. Sanders did absolutely phenomenal, but just something to keep an eye on, that they do have more than one quarterback. If he's that good, I wonder how good the other one is. So awesome. That was yesterday. Appreciate y'all hanging in there. Now we're going to get to today. We've got a boatload of college football games. 10 plus. Everyone pretty much is going to play this week. As the opening week, top 25 matchups. We're going to start. There's so many. I'm just going to kind of go down the list. I'm not going to break it down in detail for you guys because I need to be watching some of these games. So going to start it off with Ohio State. The Buckeyes are going to open up in Columbus against FAU. Lane Kiffin. It's always an interesting matchup, but I fully expect Ohio State to just completely roll on this one. Lane Kiffin, as much as he's a fiery coach and he brings a lot of energy, his team just isn't that good. I don't even know who their quarterback's going to be. There was a kid that transferred from Oklahoma. He was in there last year, but he's had so many behavioral problems. It's been absolutely crazy. So, hey, what's going on, Aaron, baby? Hopefully y'all doing all right. What do y'all think about today's college football matchups? Anything that's intriguing y'all? Any questions that y'all might have? Holler at me. Let me know. But yeah, Ohio State moving in. Ohio State's actually favored by 29 points. This is going to be Day's debut, if you will. I know he was the interim head coach last year, but this is officially, this is his football team. He's in control, and he's had this entire offseason to prepare them for this. So they're favored by 29 points. Even though that they have a brand new head coach, they have a brand new quarterback and a new defensive scheme, I still think that they'll cover the points. I'm taking them 65-10. Next one is going to be Iowa State going into the Big 12 against North Iowa. Iowa State's favored by 22 points, but it's an interesting matchup. These teams have played each other multiple times, and since 2007, North Iowa's actually gotten the better of them 3 different times. One recently, like 2 or 3 years ago. So it's going to be interesting. I still think that Iowa will win, but they've got a stout defense. They've got a young quarterback, and the coach for Iowa, he always seems to put them in the best positions. He knows how to game plan for certain teams. I really like this head coach. Obviously, he's only been there for a couple years, but I think he's in the right spot. They returned 16 starters. I think that was pretty good, even though it's not a brand new quarterback. This North Iowa team, so it's not that they're gonna get slapped around and embarrassed. But with a new quarterback playing this very, very stout defense, I'm going to take Iowa State 35-17. I don't think that they'll cover. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that one. I think that they'll win handsomely, but I don't think that they're going to cover the 22 points. I'm going Iowa State 35-17. As much as I love Iowa State and the fire that they bring, right? Switching off to the next one, Nebraska Cornhuskers against South Alabama. I'm ready for some real football games. We'll get to that here in a little bit, but we're going to start off with get these powder puffs out of the way. Excuse me. All I can really say about this one is going to be Scott Frost. I think that the entire team, the entire coaching staff, pretty much Nebraska, the state of itself, is going to be behind Scott Frost and what he's been able to do. Had a very rocky start last year. I think they went like 0-5 to start the year, and then they kind of started to pick things up after the ending of the season, the off season, all that kind of stuff. They're buying in, and I think that they're going to absolutely cover. I'm taking the cover. They were actually favored by over 36 points, so that kind of shows you how much I believe in this team. They're not winning the Big Ten or anything like that, but against South Alabama, if you're a betting man, if you're looking for a parlay or something like that to throw in there, then I'm going to take that spread. Moving on to Washington. Washington's going to stay in that state. They're actually going to be going to East Washington, where they are favored by 23 points. This will be interesting. They lose a couple of guys in the Pac-12 right there, but they gain a decent quarterback. And Eason, this is going to be his debut for this football team. He hasn't thrown technically an NCAA pass. Now he's not a freshman or anything like that, but it's another one of those guys that went into the transfer portal, and he's coming out on the other side. He actually came from Georgia, so he was behind Jake Fromm and Justin Fields, things like that, and obviously wasn't able to win the starting job. So he goes to Washington and hopefully tries to make something of the Pac-12 and kind of make some national recognition for them. I know that they've been good here and there, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes in the Pac-12. It's Pac-12 really needs to show some sort of glimpses this year of something. They've got a couple tests early this week, actually, including this game, and then Oregon, which we'll get into here in a little bit. But they haven't been. When's the last one? Was 2010? They were in the BCS championship, and then obviously the Florida State and Oregon was the last time that they actually really. Oregon was the last time that they were in the college football playoffs. So hopefully try to get back into that, so it's not just SEC Big 10, Big 12, and independent like it was last year. So, because Notre Dame should be there, but we can go ahead and switch on to Bama if y'all want. Really nothing to say on this one. It's going to be, they're gonna cover their points. They're gonna actually blow them out. You can say that you want to look on how Bama's going to respond. After getting absolutely demolished in the national championship versus Clemson last year, you can say, how's Tua going to respond to the injuries, to losing the Heisman, to all this kind of stuff. But really, what do you expect? I mean, they're playing Duke, and it's Alabama, so I fully expect a 50 them to win by 50 points. I'm gonna move on and not waste anybody's time on that one. Penn State versus Idaho. They're playing an FCS team again, so it's a tune-up game. I expect a shutout, and I don't. It's a Big Ten team, so they know how to play their defense, especially as of late. So. Stanford, Northwestern. Now we're starting to get some steam going. Now we're starting to talk about some real things, right? Now, on Stanford, this is going to be really interesting to see what they're going to be able to do. They were absolutely horrible last year in running the ball, which is very surprising because they had Bryce Love. Now, I know he had a couple injuries, things like that, but whenever you have, he was 2 years ago, he almost entered into the NFL draft. It was going to be very interesting to see where he was going to land. He had a phenomenal rookie season, like Heisman-esque rookie season, if you will, against that. That was the year that I believe Baker Mayfield won the Heisman. So they were 122nd in rushing out of 129 teams. Whenever they're kind of a rushing team, so that if that stat kind of doesn't blow your mind, it probably should. It probably should. Stanford. Let's see. A lot of people actually have this one on upset alert. They're favored by 7 points. Stanford is to win, but I don't think that they're going to win by 7 points. But I don't think that they're going to have an upset. So what I'm going to call, I'm thinking that Stanford's going to win, but I'm going with like a 24-20 game. I just feel like it's going to be kind of close. Northwestern's usually unpredictable. Just ask Ohio State and a couple other Big Ten teams. But yeah, I'm taking Stanford on this one. Hopefully they kind of corrected some of those issues in the run game. Offensive linemen was like a revolving door of offensive linemen last year. So they replace now. here's an interesting thing. They actually replace another big issue that I have is they have of their 5 receiving leaders, their 5 receivers last year, 4 of them are no longer with the team. They've moved on, graduated, whatever the case may be. So that definitely circles something for me. I'm looking at you, Stanford. I'm looking at you today, and I'm going to see what you're made of. But I am not going to be surprised if they do get upset. But I'm gonna give them a little credit. That much, like, no, not that much. That much credit. So Stanford going in there, +7. I'm gonna take them 24-20. Yeah, man. Hopefully they can do some defense, or some offense. That's really kind of the underlying thing that I've learned over the past couple days is that the Big Ten is just defense. The Big 12 is just offense, and the SEC is just somewhere right in the middle where they're just dominating and getting recruits. And then you have Clemson standing alone, the ACC with the SEC, kind of, because nobody else is worth a GD in the ACC, unfortunately. Whenever your toughest game is against, in your conference, is against Syracuse, then it's almost like a no wonder the Patriots win the AFC East every year is because they're playing against the Bills, the Dolphins, the Jets, who are like dead last in offensive statistics if you go back and look. So Stanford, keeping my eyes on you. Hopefully you can do something. I'm just going to blow through this one for a little bit. Syracuse, if you're betting, this is kind of mainly if you're looking to play some bets, again, some of those parlays, some of those things that some of those other teams that you just want to kind of stack up and see if you can make any type of money. For me, this is what I'm doing. I'm taking the points on Syracuse. I think that they're going to cover. I think Georgia is also going to cover. I don't think they're going to have any issue there. One issue that I do have is LSU. I don't know how much they're going to want to see. Let me pull up my. Whew, it's bright. I'll make y'all look at it. How's that? Awesome. Oh, Nebraska 7-up, nothing. Sorry, I didn't want to see that, but holy shit. Yeah, I'm glad I picked some of those. So, anyways, all right, we're gonna go down there. The LSU. I'm not gonna take those points. I don't trust them. It's not that I don't think that they're going to win. I think they're going to win handsomely, but they're favored by 28 points. I just don't know if they have 28 points, in them. Now, watch, they're gonna win 50-0, but but I'm just I don't feel comfortable whenever, especially when I'm directing this conversation. I think I'm picking these teams based on how I want to spend my money, how I want to bet my money, things like that. I'm not taking LSU whenever I'm spending my money. So Georgia, I definitely think, like I said, is going to cover. Michigan, I think, is going to cover. We're going to go to Iowa. I actually am not going to put any money on Iowa. The number 20 team in the nation. I know they're playing Miami, Ohio, but let's take a look at this if you really want to think about it. By 24 points with Iowa, no, I'm not doing it. I don't trust that team. Michigan State left a kind of a little salt in my mouth right there after yesterday. Their atrocious offense. I just never know what to expect now from Big Ten. So I think their defense will be stout. They lost a lot of multiple first round tight ends caliber last year. So it's going to be good to see how they respond to that. Usually when teams have such a dominant player at that position, they usually have a pretty good backup, recruiting, things like that to kind of fill that void. But they lost not one but two very good tight ends in Hawkinson and Noah Fant. So moving on. Now we're going to go to Texas. Texas is going to play LA Tech. Favored, I believe, I think it was like 19, 20 points. I'm taking Texas, believe it or not. even though they're 3-6 versus the spread, I'm taking Texas. I think that they've got a lot to prove. They had a little salt in their ones last year. They ended in an extremely high note. Beating the hell out of Georgia. Sam Mellinger, a lot of people are kind of doubting him, except Joel Klatt, which, aloha. How's it going, Jolly Wiggles? Hope you're doing all right. Let me know what you think on today's college football matchups, Heisman predictions, all that kind of good stuff. I'm just going down the list and seeing if you should cover those points. If you are betting on Texas, then I would too. Even though I'm not a Texas fan, I think that they're going to get it done versus LA Tech. They're just going to dominate them. I don't think that they're going to have an issue looking forward because the big one is next week versus LSU in Texas. Texas is going to get it taken care of. We're going to move on to Washington State, who's playing a team that only beat one. Texas will win by at least 30. My main concern is Oregon. Oh, buddy, we're going to get there. I agree with you. Yeah, I think they're going to win by 30. Washington State, they're playing a team that only beat one FBS team last year. I absolutely am putting my money on Washington State. I think Leash is going to have them in the right position. And then Oregon and Auburn. I'm glad you kind of hopped into this one. Now, what do they got? Auburn, what do you think, Jolly Wiggles? What are we going with? Auburn's favored by what, 3 points? This is a big one for playoff implications. This is a big one for recruiting. This is just a big one in general for Justin Herbert, for his draft stock, things like that, going against an SEC team, going against a ranked team, hasn't always panned out for them in the past. He does good on ranked teams in the Pac-12, but outside the Pac-12 is seemingly where he kind of struggles. Auburn, they bring back a lot of experienced defensive linemen. Herbert's supposed to be the man, and that's why I'm gonna take Oregon. I'm gonna do it, man. This is my big game of the week, kind of. I'm gonna take Oregon just simply because I think they got the man, but Auburn has freshman QB for sure. Because they're trying to replace Jarrett Stidham that didn't really do too good. He kind of moved. He moved from a good position, a great situation. He was throwing the ball over in Baylor. Everything happened in Baylor, so he kind of had to get out of there, and he didn't flourish in Auburn that some people thought he would, but maybe this freshman QB will. I'm taking. They got one of the best D lines. They've got 5-year starters, or 5th-year seniors, starting for them. So that's really where it's going to be decided in the trenches. Can Oregon's offensive line hold on to Auburn's defensive line? And can Auburn's defensive line, get off those blocks, which they absolutely should, and create pressure for Herbert, get sacks, make him make bad decisions, things like that. But all in all, I'm my thing is I'm going to take Oregon. I'm going to take the one who's going to have the quarterback, just because I'm a quarterback-oriented fan, if you will. So I'm an OU fan. Sadly enough, I know I'm going to get a little booze on that one, but. But that Auburn QB is a mystery man. Mystery man. Tell you who I actually like was Wilson over at BYU. If you haven't he's kind of my mystery man, if you will. He's really good, man. He's kind of elusive. He's almost. I'm not going to throw out Baker Mayfield's name, but because he's not, it's kind of hard to be a. But lost. Yeah, they did. I mean, when you're playing the Utah. When you're playing the old Utes, they had such a dominant defense. They had pick six after pick six and fumble after fumble. So, but I think he's a good quarterback. That's really where I was just kind of going, with that one. I don't think he's. I think he's a year removed from kind of really doing something, making a big name for himself. But going back onto that one, Herbert, I'm taking Oregon. Go Ducks. Then we're gonna move on to Oklahoma. Pick six. Whose fault is that? That's Wilson's for sure. He wasn't the only quarterback that played for him in that game, but he was the ones that were throwing the pick six. Utah just had an overall dominant defense. They've got one of the best front sevens, in that conference, and it definitely showed the other night. So Oklahoma, I'm actually not gonna. I wouldn't put money on them. They're favored by like 23 points. I think that they'll win, give or take around 15 to 20 points. Maybe like a 55-20 20 something. Yeah, I don't know. All I'm saying, Oklahoma's defense was absolutely atrocious last year. It was, 129th out of 129th in passing defense. From a victory standpoint, they're going to win the game. They're not going to get upset twice in a row by Houston. But if you can hold them to under 300 yards passing and 100 yards rushing, the quarterback, De'Aaron King, then it's a win. If you can hold this Houston team to under 30 points tomorrow, then I'm going to consider it a positive for Oklahoma. That really their only stiff competition is going to be Texas, kind of going through the division. So. But yeah, man, OU could be great, but damn, hope they learned defense from last year. I'm telling you what, man, their defense is just atrocious. Now, hopefully, they bring in Alex Grinch, defensive. He was the co-defensive coordinator for Ohio State last year. Doesn't really inspire too much hope because Ohio State's defense wasn't that good last year. But it's a mentality thing with Grinch. He's very fiery. He brings in a complete a new defensive scheme, and defense. It's kind of like those. What's the definition of insanity for Oklahoma? Doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. Mike Stoops was bringing them to the insane asylum, and I'm glad that they got him out. Ruffin McNeil, the interim defensive coordinator, wasn't doing anything last year, but he was really only working with what he had. So. Grinch, he kind of brings that fiery mentality. I'm not saying that they're going to completely flip around. They just have to be average in order for them to kind of compete nationally. They've got a great offense. They've got a great play caller. It's just a matter of, like I was saying earlier, can they be somewhat average on defense? Just need to make a stop. Just one, just one every once in a while. I love Jalen Hurts, but I don't know if he's that guy that, last year Kyler was running for his life every single drive that he had. He had to score in order to win, and that's why he was so successful. That's why he won the Heisman, things like that. Can Hurts do that? I think he's a phenomenal quarterback. I'm interested to see how his numbers change versus going from an SEC to a Big 12, or going from, the Nick Saban to a Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley is evidently... if you see what he's done, he's taken two other quarterbacks, that transferred from other schools that had moderate, statistics, and then had him do something that's never been done before. So, poor OU offense past few years. You just need to make... Yeah, if even 2 years ago, when they had Baker Mayfield and they lost that heartbreaker against Georgia in the college football playoffs, if that defense that they had, it was bad, but it wasn't last year's bad. If they had the defense 2 years ago, last year, we might have a different story. We could have done something. And I'm not saying that they're going to beat Alabama. One thing that you can't do is go down 28-0 against Alabama, because you're never going to win that game. And they were actually up 17 points against Georgia, and right before the half, and Lincoln Riley, they squib kicked it right before there was like a minute left before the half. They could have just gone in. They were going to get the ball after halftime, gone in, but that damn defense, I know, gone in 17 points up, but no, they kicked a squib kick, and then they jumped, threw it down the field, got a late field goal to make it 14 points, and for some reason, I had a couple coworkers over that day, and when that happened, it was like, it's not over. I just know it's not over. If 17 points, for some reason, it just felt good to me. 14 points, not out of the water yet. So, but all in all, it's going to be a good college football Sunday. I know some of these teams are playing some of the powder puffs, but it's been, over 230 something days since college football season, so I don't really care at this point. I'll watch high school football. But Jolly Wiggles, I appreciate you, man, kind of hanging out with me. I'm gonna go hop on to some of the three games that started at 11 and kind of take some notes, so I can. I do one of these podcasts pretty much every day, if not every other day, talking about football, college football, professional football, and then also do video game gameplay. So if you ever want to hop on, I appreciate you, and encourage you to come back if you haven't already. You know, hit that follow button, and check out the rest of the social media platforms that I have. God bless you, man. Bama versus Texas A&M could be interesting. It actually could. I'm very interested to see Clemson in Texas A&M next year or next week. Texas A&M looked really good actually. A couple days ago on Thursday, Kellen Mond looked really good. Clemson looked good, but the quarterback, you know, it was just the level of competition. I don't think he was just trying to make a couple plays. He made a couple poor decisions, but Trevor Lawrence is the man. I actually think that running backs, you know, is getting a little less credit than he should. That ETN Jr., man, he's phenomenal. What do you have? 12 carries for over 200 yards, a couple touchdowns, averaging 17, 18 yards a carry. Man, that guy's really good. ACC offensive player of the year last year. But everyone wants to talk about the quarterback. So, although it wasn't, let's see how Hurts does on OU. It's good. Hey, they're going to play Houston tomorrow. Tomorrow at 6:30. So make sure to tune into that one. It's the only game playing on tomorrow, so kind of all eyes on that one. And then Monday, we've got Notre Dame that's going to be playing Louisville. I'm taking Notre Dame easily on that one. I don't put money on teams that go 0-8 in the conference. So Oklahoma, I'm not putting points on. So those are my picks right there. I appreciate everybody kind of hopping on and chatting with me, especially you Jolly Wiggles, and then we had Aaron Baby kind of at the beginning. So love y'all. Scranton Strangler out. Have a fantastic day. Happy Saturday.